Now, the Give Me Sport interview I mentioned earlier with WrestleVotes yielded some other news, and it's positive news on the WWE side, if this is true. Again, right now this is just coming from WrestleVotes. He claims that the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view is now considered to be completely dead. That is the show itself, not the match concept. Triple H is quite fond of the match itself. I think he's number 2, I want to say, on the list of most Hell in a Cell matches in history, behind The Undertaker. I think Randy Orton might be tied with him for number 2. But the belief is that he is going to save the stipulation to blow off big feuds, which is how it always should have been used. The worst thing that ever happened to Hell in a Cell was turning it into a pay-per-view. They killed it. They turned it into just another match. And then a few years ago, they painted it red. And I hope that WWE offers a good vision plan as part of its benefits package so that whoever came up with the idea to give it a paint job can get their fucking eyes checked. Because that thing is an eyesore. The first Hell in a Cell pay-per-view they ever did was 2009. And on that very first show, they did 3 Hell in a Cell matches on one show. 3! In one night. You don't think that's overkill? 2012. They did the end of an era, Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania. Even though they had a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view later in the year. And that was the beginning of the end on that show for Ryback, if you remember, because when John Cena got hurt, Ryback got his spot against CM Punk, and they didn't want to put the title on Ryback, so they had to beat him, and he was never the same after that. But it hasn't all been bad. I don't want to make it out to be like, oh, every Hell in a Cell match has been shit, and there's been nothing good to come out of these shows. There have been some great Hell in a Cell matches since 2009. And I scratched together a quick list of my favorite Cell matches of the pay-per-view era, because I am hoping this news is true. Even though nothing's been made official yet, I am hoping it's true, and I said, well, now would be a good time to pay tribute to the positive that have come out of the Hell in a Cell pay-per-views. Now, this is not ranked or anything, and I am going to include one match that was not on a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I'm going to include the Seth Rollins and Edge Hell in a Cell match from Crown Jewel last year, even though, again, it was in Saudi Arabia, it was not on the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, just because it was such a great match. One of the best Cell matches, honestly, of the past 10 years. Got to show that match some love. But keeping it to the pay-per-view, Cody Rhodes against Seth Rollins from earlier this year. That's one that's going to be talked about years from now because of the injury to Cody. And it's one that made sense to do inside the Cell because it paid off a months-long feud between the two of them. Sasha Banks against Bayley in 2020. They had a great one, which is not easy to do because they did that in the Thunderdome. They did that in front of no fans. And I hated that. I hate that whole no fans era. It's terrible. Hopefully they never have to go back to that again. But they went out there and they had a hell of a match. Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch in 2019. The only redeeming part of that entire show was the opening match they had inside the Cell. They had an excellent match. The Usos and the New Day. Tag Team Hell in a Cell in 2017. May be my favorite match those two teams have ever had. And think about how many hundreds of matches it feels like those two teams have had over the years. But it had everything. It was violent, as violent as a match could be in PG WWE without blood. There was drama, there was great action, some innovative spots in there, just tremendous stuff from these two teams. The greatest tag team Hell in a Cell match that I have ever seen. Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker in 2015. That one did have blood, and I loved how Undertaker had been kicking Brock in the dick for months, and in the end, the dick kicker got what he deserved. They surprised me, honestly, with how good that match was. So those are my 6 favorites of the pay-per-view era. You already know what my least favorite one is. You know what the worst Hell in a Cell match of all time is. Seth Rollins and The Fiend in 2019. It belongs in a landfill, it stinks so much. Anytime you have a Hell in a Cell match with a finish like that, I don't care how good the match is up to that point, it's going straight to the bottom of the pile. We didn't even get that with that match. I can't even sit here and tell you, well, it was good until the end. No, it wasn't good at all. The whole thing was shit. Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman in 2018 when Braun cashed in his Money in the Bank and failed. That was the worst of all the matches that Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman ever had, and they had some good ones. This was not one of them. With an absolutely horrendous finish. Ended in a no contest. And if I remember, I think there may have actually been a referee botch with Mick Foley in that one as well. But terrible. And the last one I'll put on my worst of list here. Undertaker and Kane in 2010. That was pretty fucking bad. They were moving in slow motion in that match. Especially Undertaker. Paul Bearer turns on the Undertaker. I mean, where have I seen that one before? Just awful. Awful. One of the worst matches those two have ever had. So those are my least favorite Hell in a Cell matches from the pay-per-view era. WrestleVotes also spoke of there being talk within WWE of doing the Money in the Bank matches at WrestleMania and having the men's ladder match on one night and having the women's ladder match on another night. This is, again, it's like getting rid of the Cell pay-per-view, something I pitched just last week. Now we're learning that those same discussions have taken place within the halls of Titan Tower. I like it when common sense prevails. I'm not used to this. I'm used to the exact opposite. I'm going to be doing this show 15 years next month. And let me tell you, the majority of those 15 years I've been railing against pretty much the complete opposite of common sense. So it's nice when I start hearing things about, decisions that are being made or things that are being changed or overturned that make sense. I love it. I could get used to this.